girls, it's Friday. Julie, I really loved your camera. I didn't realize, I mean, it always took really good pictures, but seeing the video quality of it just blew my mind. Tara, I agreed with you. Alan Rickman made a fantastic Colonel Brendan in the Sense and Sensibility movie. Rachel, your confession was so adorable, and I actually really do like The Gunslinger, so if you say that I'm going to like the later books more, I'm really excited. First, I hope you have a great trip back home. I saw on Facebook today all the movies that you're bringing with you on the train, so have fun with those. I am so relieved you did not roll me for your question about the notebooks for Rachel, because I really don't think I would be able to cover all of them in 5 minutes, so... Rachel asked me what my favorite thing to do when it rains is. It's really funny that you asked me that, because yesterday we had a thunderstorm for like the first time in months, and it's been a really dry, warm winter so far in North Carolina, so when I could tell it was going to rain, I just opened the sliding glass door and I wrote, and it was amazing, and I miss doing that. I used to do that all the time when I was younger when it rained, because I was still in that kid phase where we played outside when it was sunny, but when it was raining, I would go inside and I would write. So this week we're talking about Jane Austen, and I feel a lot of pressure to cover this because, one, I'm a big Jane Austen fan, and two, Anna was a huge Jane Austen fan when she was doing those Writer Girl videos with us, so I feel like I need to kind of represent her at the same time. So Anna, I hope I make you proud. I got into Jane Austen relatively late. Pride and Prejudice movie came out with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden. I had no idea about the story. I knew it was a classic, but I never picked it up. My mom and her sisters, I have 4 aunts in total, love Georgette Heyer, and they love Jane Austen. They love the Regency type of books. They were all going to go see it, and they asked me if I wanted to come along, and I said sure. Something that I really walked away with was this sense of characters. I've said before, I love character-driven plots more so than plot-driven plots, if that makes any sense. Stephen King does it a lot, where he'll focus on the personality of the characters and how they react to what the plot is happening around them. Before I go into it more, I need to preface it by saying that I really don't like romance novels, or novels where romance is the central theme. I really do think that Jane Austen is my exception because she uses romance as a cover to make social commentary about the world that she was living in at that time, which I really respected, because you don't see that a lot. You don't see people using the genre as a means to convey their message or what they want the theme of the book to be. And I have read all of them, although it was off and on in college, so most of them I only read once, with the exception being Pride and Prejudice. I did read Pride and Prejudice more than once because, yeah, it was like a comfort blanket in college. Something to keep in mind when you read Jane Austen, I feel like, is Jane Austen was part of the landed gentry. The landed gentry was a class of people in England who came from old money, basically. When you ever hear of them talking about gentlemen in the stories, it means men who come from this class. You can either come from old money, or you can marry into a rich family, or you can come into money from an economic venue, which is becoming an officer in the Navy or be a very wealthy merchant. For women, the only way that they could keep their status and keep it from going lower and make sure that they had enough money to provide for their children was to marry. Obviously they couldn't work. Marriage was a job to these women. If they wanted children and they wanted grandchildren, the only way that they would be able to make sure that they had money in the future was to marry someone who had money. Now we come to Pride and Prejudice. It is my favorite and my hardest to talk about. There's just so much that I want to say about this book. Elizabeth Bennet is a really complex heroine. She loves her family despite everything that they do wrong. She has 4 sisters. Jane is really reserved. Mary's oblivious. Lydia and Kitty are boy crazy. And then Mrs. Bennet, her mother, is the most neurotic character I've ever read about. And Mr. Bennet, her father, while being very witty, constantly puts down his wife for being silly. which was, I guess, a way to say stupid. And there is actually a part in the book where Mr. Darcy points all of this out to Lizzie. So when Darcy proposed to Lizzie, he says all this first, which was always a comical part if you think about it, because he's basically admitting, I like you despite all of this. Lizzie says, thanks but no thanks, you're a jerk. And Darcy is a jerk for the first part of the book, and I would say most of the book. But he's just as complex as Elizabeth is and has his reasons. I mean, here's a guy who makes a lot of money, but he's also very proud and jaded. He picks and chooses his friends on their ability to act correctly, and he knows this makes him a jerk, and so doesn't really respect any of the women who throw himself at him because they obviously just want him for his money. Since he doesn't flirt or flatter them in return, it can't be his personality that they're attracted to. Elizabeth is the first person he meets that actually doesn't like him. And I have to admit, this makes their love story really dynamic and makes it one of my favorites. Because in the later part of the book, Elizabeth's youngest sister, Lydia, disappears with a con man named Bingley, who had been present for most of the book. Darcy, who actually finds them and brings him to justice. Darcy says that he had an obligation and he felt guilty for it even happening because he had known that Bingley had been a con artist, but he was too proud to warn everyone and risk the embarrassment of others knowing how he had been conned first. Back then, girls were obsessed with marriage and marrying. It defined who they were. Now it's about having your own reality TV show, or how much weight you lost, or how pretty you were, or just how big your Sweet 16 party was. Jane wrote that being with someone who loves you for you was more important than any of that. As my nieces grow up, that's a message that I would like them to know. And I think Jane is able to convey that message. Okay, so rant over. Thanks for staying through it. The word of the day is gasser, which means something that's extraordinarily pleasing or successful. And the question of the day is, if you could travel cross country, how would you travel? By car, train, bike, plane, whatever, and why? 5, me. 2, Tara. Alright guys, that's going to do it for Friday. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and Julie, I will see you on Monday. Bye!